Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank you for coming on to my channel again and my stream. It's a very tumultuous time in our country right now. We don't know what the president will do, but we know what we will do. And that is, one, we will show the president that he has our support, and we will show the president that we are willing and ready to fight with him all the way. With that being said, we have with us today Cara Castronuova. And now she is the founder of Liberate New York, and she's a political activist, and she is a former champion boxer, which is exactly the kind of... Oh, excuse me. Give me 1 second here. Don't know why I just heard me twice. But she is a former boxer, which is exactly the kind of fighting spirit that we need right now. And she will be interviewing our very high honored, esteemed guest, Mr. Wiebe. So with that, Cara, I'm going to leave this to you to interview our guest here.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So just for all of you who, just to introduce the guest, Kirk Wiebe, he was a senior analyst at NSA from, I think, over 25 years. We'll ask him that question when he comes on. And in the aftermath of 9/11, he was amongst a handful of NSA employees who stumbled upon a secret program at the agency to monitor the communications of millions of US citizens. And him and his colleagues decided to approach Inspector Generals at the Defense Department and the Justice Department with what they found. So that's just a little bit of his background. This guy's been around for a while and he knows his stuff. So Mr. Wiebe, I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are this morning with what's going on, and kind of to inform the audience about your ideas that we spoke about the other day.
Well, it's interesting, Cara. And first of all, I could never box you in a boxing ring because I could not hit such a beautiful person.
Thank you.
It just isn't going to happen. All right. So with that, let me say that my colleague Bill Binney and I, as you stated, we worked at NSA for really over 30 years. And during that time, I was awarded that agency's second highest award for work done with 70 colleagues for the national defense, the national security under the Reagan administration. Later on, after Bill and I retired, Bill and I again were thanked for serving the nation when we discovered the Iranians importing from this country, the United States, little electronic components that go into the building of switches that work via telephone to set off IEDs and blow the legs and arms off our soldiers in the Middle East. And you've seen so many veterans walking around with prostheses and missing arms and legs. And we did that as a freebie just because we're patriots. In the most current activity, this election, we again are stepping forward because it's the country, it's the nation, it's our very foundation, it's the Constitution, it's our way of governance, and someone is trying to destroy that and take it away from us right before our very eyes. And I want to tell you and your audience right now something I learned this morning. This attack on the voting process is multifaceted. It's not just stuffing ballots and ballot harvesting and duplicating votes and large volumes of mailing. Those are parts of it. But there could be as many as 8 other kinds of fraud going on that we will hear more about as people investigate, discover, and generate evidence for the Trump legal team. For example, I did not know, for example, that the sign-in process at voting precincts could be hacked electronically using something called the e-poll book. I said, what is an e-poll book? Well, it's kind of like a tablet or an iPad. You sign in,
Yes.
You may not touch the iPad, but somebody in there who's looking you up, your address, your name, and all that, and finds you, signs you in. And that can be hacked to cause the doubling of identities.
Yes.
So it can go on in multiple ways.
Not to interrupt you because this is so interesting, but I myself worked at the polls on election day. I called up to volunteer. They actually were like, no, we'll pay you. So I wanted to just kind of see it from the inside. I was just, before this, I was prepared for this to happen. So I worked at the polls, and yes, you're right. They call them poll pads. They're Apple, basically essentially just Apple iPads, but they're all connected through some sort of Ethernet. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Like an internal system.
Yep.
And so there's no more of those books where they're actual paper records where people sign in.
Exactly.
People are all on these iPads, and I was just like, I mean, technology is the easiest thing to manipulate. So if somebody knows how. So I was kind of surprised that we were signing people in with this ePad, and I found it to be very problematic because a lot of people have the same names. We're not allowed to really question the voters. We can't ask for ID. Errors were made. Like a guy came in, I remember he was 35, and then somebody had signed him in earlier as a 65-year-old man that had the same name. So it's just a lot of errors could be made. And you're right. We have to just take the poll pad's word that that person voted or didn't vote already. So technology could be tampered with. I don't trust technology. How do you, could you talk more about how technology could be tampered with?
Oh, yes. And you are right. When you say technology is scary from a hacking point of view, because if very good security measures are not available, you will have fraud. It will happen. And we now know it's not just occasional. A mistake is a mistake. Fine. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the purposeful manipulation of technology to create votes that are illegal. And that is entirely possible. And these systems are not protected from that. The 50 states that make up this union are in charge of their election process. The state legislatures are. But the states have not put the emphasis on security for those systems. They have put the emphasis on making it easier for everyone to vote. If we do not secure these systems, I can tell you, you will never have another free election. And this one is not free.
Right.
It is the reason why the Trump legal people, all of us as Americans who want honesty. Hey, if we're going to lose to Joe Biden, all right, let's do it honestly.
Yes.
All I want is honesty and integrity. But the states have not funded these systems to do that kind of a job. So we have to pay a visit to our legislatures and hold them accountable, no matter what happens. This was all avoidable.
Yeah, I feel like this, like you said, this was really an organized, I've been saying that, like a lot of people are looking at like, oh, people are just mailing in extra votes. No, I think this was a really organized operation that has been planned out for a while. I think they crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. I don't know if that's the right expression. Knowing that Donald Trump would obviously contest, I'm sure that they have a backup plan for that. How hard do you think it's going to be? And I'm just trying to stay positive, but how hard or easy is it to prove fraud when it comes to technology?
To move forward in future years, or to prove the fraud?
For both, to prove the fraud now, because it's just everybody's freaking out today. I think a lot of people are freaking out. They are whether they're Democrat or a Republican, it's scary to know that our elections and our vote don't actually count, and something like this could be pulled off at such a massive scale.
It's difficult. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's not difficult from a technology point of view. We have the tools to prove fraud. What we don't have is the data.
Right.
Most of the voting data is still sitting in the computers there in the precincts.
Yes.
People are still counting.
Mm-hmm.
So if we cannot get our hands on the data, to compare against data sources that are very good. For example, property records tend to be very good. Why? Because the government wants to tax you, right? So those tend to be very accurate. They're going to get their money. IRS records from the IRS, same thing. Do you really live where you say you do, right? So we have to cross-check all these names against these databases. We can do that. It's not rocket science, but it's getting our hands on the voting data and then using software to bang it against Social Security death index, the IRS, the tax records, property records. How about telephone records, people that own telephones? Even people who are crooks have a telephone, and they don't get to keep it and operate it if they don't pay the bill. Those bills are sent to a specific address that could be checked against a vote,
right,
to see if it's right.
Well, who holds this data, as you say? Is it each individual state, and how can we access it, and is there enough time?
The time, if you ask me, is there enough time to analyze every vote, the legitimacy of every vote entered into the system against a person, whether they're legally voting or from out of state or whatever? I doubt that we can do that across the entire nation. But what we can do is do it for the states that are in question. And we know the battleground states. We know what those are. Now, my feeling is we shouldn't stop at the battleground states. We should even do it in New York. Every state needs to know what's going on. The people deserve to know. So even if we don't cross the finishing line in time for Trump, this process needs to continue so that we can finish for the people. The people deserve to know how bad this election was.
You know, for me, again, like I said, I personally know this story because I worked the election booths and I was the supervisor of my of the location I was in. So that means I drop off some stuff at the precinct right afterwards. The polls closed at 9 o'clock. By the time we packed up the voting booths and like kind of locked them up, and we had our little envelopes to drop off at the precinct with, I guess, some data in it. I lived 10 minutes away from the precinct. I wasn't even home yet before they had pretty much called New York for Biden. So what does our vote even count? It's so frustrating. Like they just make an assumption that New York is a blue state and they don't count the votes. I'm sure a lot of that stuff is still sitting at the precinct. They literally called it for him, probably without counting any of the votes, because it just makes no sense. Like I said, I wasn't even home yet. It's an elementary school, 5-10 minutes away. And I'm like, I just dropped that data off. And I know that all the other locations are just ended. And it takes about half an hour to 45 minutes to pack up and close up the voting booths. It's frustrating. I think that if you could prove fraud in one state, then that it's easy to say that it could happen in all. So I think we got to take a look at all the states and figure out which one's the easiest to prove fraud in, because that should pretty much say the election. I don't know if they would. I don't think they would redo the election, but if you could even prove fraud in New York, or prove that they're not counting ballots and they're calling states, that could be said for all of the states with this new system.
You are absolutely right. And then, because this kind of situation has never been placed in front of the courts, we now have to be smart enough so that we don't walk in with a bunch of technical hum-haw that a judge isn't going to understand. We have to say it in a way with the evidence that shows that this cheating is so widespread that it probably occurred in all 50 states.
Yes.
Right? And the pattern is this, and let him see what we've discovered so that he can reach no conclusion but to say it was all corrupt and we're going to recount. And I want to go past a recount. I want an audit right to the ballot itself. Recount, you just redo the numbers, but you can still report wrong numbers. if you
Right,
just,
of course.
right. So we can't do that. We have to really recount the ballots and audit them for accuracy.
Right. I think auditing is, recount is important, but like I'm suspicious that obviously there were more votes in there that should have been, and those votes might still be there if there's a recount. Just really, I think it's the technology that people can manipulate, like you're talking about earlier. Could you talk to us a little bit more about like any theories that you have that I might what it might at what went on this particular election, that where technology could have been manipulated, and any suspicions that
Sure.
you might have?
Sure. Well, we just talked about these e-books or poll books, tabs, these tablets, these iPads. That's one way. You have software in there that doubles the vote, the sign-in for a Democrat, which makes it look like 2 votes, right?
Mhm.
All right. Another way is, and we're talking electronic, another way is to have a logon, administrative logon. Everybody logs onto a computer, right?
Yes.
To tally the votes in these election processes. If I put false logons on the system ahead of the election, maybe I have them there for a year ahead of the election, but I have them hidden.
Yeah.
When those counting machines are hooked up to the internet, which they are because they report the counts, that illegal user who knows the logon, the secret logons, can log into them. Let's say there's 5,000 people doing this across the nation. They can log on to those counting systems and change the total that way.
Right.
So you're hacking into it ahead of time, implanting these false logons, and then the bad people get a list of them and they just log on and log in.
Right. And and then we always say the bad people who are in this case are there. Is it I feel like it's an organizational thing that's beyond our comprehension, not our comprehension, but it's so, I think this has been planned for years now. And I think that COVID kind of really helped accelerate their cause. I don't know if that's the right word, but with the whole COVID thing, it was really a big distraction for the country. Nobody was really paying attention to these new election laws that the governors were making. I don't even know if that's legal, but I know that Cuomo started changing stuff around summertime where it was unprecedented, where they're sending out all these solicitations for mail-in ballots.
Right.
Which I myself got about 6 solicitation for mail-in ballots for people that have lived in my house through the years. Don't live here anymore. If I wanted to, I could have easily just sent in for their ballots and voted 6 times, because no ID is required at all. All you have to do is swear an affidavit. Obviously, a person that's going to vote illegally is not going to care that they're signing an affidavit. It's not questioned. We're not allowed to question at the Board of Elections, is what I discovered from working there. And it's frustrating. I don't want to go off on a tangent from what you're saying, but
no, what you just brought up is important. You talked about the governor. The governor cannot change election law.
Yes.
He's not authorized. He has to get it passed through the state legislature. So if your governor was literally changing things without the permission of the state legislature, he was operating in an unauthorized, illegal,
yes.
not lawful way.
Correct. And that's what Cuomo's been doing since the beginning of COVID, or at least since that's when everybody started paying attention. God only knows the executive orders that he sent out before. But, I know that what he did with this time around was very unprecedented, and really trying to encourage these mail-in votes. I don't know. They didn't even, and they weren't, I mean, what did these mail-in votes even matter really? And these absentee ballots, if they weren't even counted before they called New York State. I mean,
Right. There are many states that have been called, and absentee ballots, various kinds of ballots, ballots that are filed by the sick who claim they can't come in and vote that way. There are lots of different kinds of ballots that have not yet been counted, including military ballots.
So what do you think, like, let's take specific states like Pennsylvania, like what could have happened there where where Donald Trump was in the lead by millions, not millions. I know, I think when I went to sleep it was, or Michigan might have been 700,000 or a big
It's a
number like
lot.
that. And then by the next morning it was like neck and neck with Biden, and then somehow Biden pulled ahead. Like how do you, how could we, how is that explained from your viewpoint?
Well, remember this. Do you remember they stopped counting? Didn't they?
Yes,
They
did.
stopped the count suddenly. I've never heard of that happening in any election.
Me
Stop
neither.
counting? Why? I'll tell you why. They wanted to gather as many, to make and gather up. They probably had a lot of pre-staged ballots for Biden stored away in boxes, trucks, cars, garages,
100%.
ready to go. So if they were needed, they could drive them in and drop them off. And like you say, it was so well planned. They had people who were part of this gang that simply took the votes, accepted them into the postal system, and sent them, didn't postmark them, or if they did postmark them, like in Michigan, they actually moved the date back to November 3rd, even though they were delivered to the post office on the 4th. So they actually changed the postmark date. So you flood the system with those while you're not counting, and then you have all these votes to count. Well, when you have votes to count, nobody can call the election till the votes are counted, right? So that's how you take over. And meantime, it also allows the hammer and the scorecard to do its thing, which is electronic and based on a mathematical calculation that cannot work until there's only 3% difference between two candidates. When Trump was way ahead, scorecard wouldn't have done a thing. It needed the votes to get closer and closer. So when they brought all these boxed ballots in.
When you say, or explain what you mean when you say scorecard to the audience.
Scorecard is a application, just like an app on your phone. It works with another capability called Hammer. Hammer opens the doors on the internet, the right switches, the right doors on the internet, so that the scorecard can get into the voting process or the counting process, so that when the official at the tally machine clicks send and sends a total, right? Biden this many, Trump this many, up to the state level. Let me explain it to you this way. Imagine the internet is like a major highway. Do you live near a major highway? Sure you do. 287, 87, what other ones could you name? I-95. If you go out and look at one of these highways, what do you see? You see cars going one direction and cars, and a lot of them, cars going the other direction. That's the internet. Imagine that now in your mind is the internet for my explanation. The scorecard at just in microseconds. Let's say you're carrying your children and your husband to dinner somewhere in your car. Scorecard grabs your car, lifts it up, opens the door, takes out your kids and your husband, and puts 3 other people in there, or however many people you have in the car. Shuts the door, puts it back on the highway, and lets the car go. Now, you don't know this because it's all done so quickly. It's in microseconds. You just had a discussion with your kids in the back seat and you're watching the traffic. It was done so quickly, you didn't notice that your kids are gone. Well, your kids are the original number. Now someone has switched and put a different number. That's why there's strangers in your back seat. And this data gets sent up to the state level and accepted because no one knows. There's not been a delay that's of any notice. Microseconds, nobody notices that. Even an email you don't get right away. It takes a few seconds to get from your house to somebody else's. And the further away, the longer the delay. But long as it's within the same country, it's quick. So it changes the vote when it's within 3% difference of the two candidates. It just keeps changing it. As long as it's within 3%, that's why the totals in these very narrow states, it's easily within 3%. As far as I know, SCORECARD is still working right now, unless the federal government has sent the FBI and stopped it.
So scorecard has been, that's a term for election technology. You're saying that they've been using for how many years?
Oh my gosh, it was designed for the war on terror to change elections in the Middle East
Wow.
to people more favorable to freedom, not terrorism.
Right.
But this has been hijacked
Wow,
and
that's
turned
funny.
against our own people.
Yeah, and who would have thought, right? It's like we look at these other countries, like in, third world countries or even in the Middle East, where like they unseat a leader and put in a new one. Okay, and now it's kind of happening to us in a way. It's been turned against us. That's really crazy.
It is, but that's what's happening.
And the hammer, can you explain what the hammer is?
The hammer is a much greater capability that I only know a little bit about. As I said with SCORECARD, it opens the internet switches so that the SCORECARD can take the right path to that voting machine, not the voting machine, but the counting machine. There's voting machines and there's counting machines. They're different computers. The American public never sees the counting machines. Those are sometimes at the local elections office in a city or precinct, or it could be at the Secretary of State's office. Depends where the states put them. But it's a computer that tallies numbers, just counts the vote for each candidate. So the hammer opens the path for the SCORECARD to go to a certain place and change the vote. Hammer also does something else that's very worrisome. Hammer has been around for about 11 years. That long.
Wow.
It has been used to crawl inside all the computers owned by people that the bad people wanted to look at. It could have been in your computer. And what it does is it crawls along the internet, enters your address, your modem, your connection to the internet, passes through your firewall on your computer, goes into your documents directory, or wherever it can access any directory on your computer, and people look and say, oh, that's interesting. Or they can even run a keyword query and say, does Cara have any files that mention the word cocaine or sex and child or whatever? You see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
I'm trying to find pedophilia. I'm trying to find druggies. I'm trying to find whatever. I can enter those words. It will find the documents. I make a copy of them, and you have no idea this is happening. And I download them and store them into a database so I can blackmail you or
Right.
do whatever I want to with you. And so we found that this hammer has been spying in this way against the Trump family, not just Donald J., but the whole family, the Supreme Court, Congress, over 400 law firms, including that of Rudy Giuliani, all the churches and synagogues, the registry of church members, those are known, over 5 million businesses, business records. Can you imagine what people could do with intellectual property from the companies that are making the latest scientific breakthroughs? Wow, I can copy it before it gets patented and put somebody out of business. So this is an evil, evil kind of a capability. And that's just another application. So that's used to gather people's information from their computers, and via SCORECARD, it's used to change election votes. And there is much more that it does, but I'm not privy to what that is. We are going to have to wait for a government investigation into it before we're going to find that out.
Do you think there, I mean, do you think there's going to, like, what kind of government investigation do you think there'll be, and to what extent will that happen? I mean,
Well,
we're all waiting to hear what's going to happen, like, nervous and scared. A lot of Americans, I think, what's Donald Trump going to do this week? Like, what government investigations are going to happen, and which ones are actually going to make a difference?
no, you're right. It's not a given that we can trust any part of government outside of the White House. I trust Donald Trump. I don't trust the FBI. I don't trust the DOJ. I don't trust many elements of government anymore. I used to. That trust has been taken away because they have not gone after bad people in an honest way.
Mm-hmm.
Trump gets taken down, or they try to take him down with Russiagate. Have you seen anybody put in jail?
No.
No. And we've only had one person named as being wrong in that whole thing, and that's a low-level lawyer at the FBI.
Right.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Not Comey, not Mueller, not Wray, not anybody.
And they spent a lot of money trying to trying to get these people in trouble.
You got it. So I do know this. The other night, Sidney Powell, lawyer for General Michael Flynn, and a friend of the White House, has appeared on two programs now, one on Steve Bannon's War Room on Newsmax, and once on Shannon Bream, night before last, I think, and told her that the information about the Hammer scorecard has been turned over to the FBI. Now, you and I don't know what they're going to do.
Turned it over, so that would be
Sidney Powell,
okay,
the attorney.
Okay.
Turned it over.
Right.
Or she would know. She would know.
Right.
If it wasn't her personally.
I just, like, before moving on to the next question I want to ask you, I just think it's pretty crazy that, everything is being censored on the internet right now. And I think they have these bots out there that are censoring, because I went to put up a tweet with Stop the Steal, and it's, how usually you type in Stop the ST and something will jump up. Nothing jumps up, and people are having to be creative and say Stop the Steal with 2 E's or Stop the Streel, because they know that right away their tweets or their Facebook messages are going to be taken down. If you put it in on a Google search, it doesn't even come up. It doesn't pop up automatically. On Facebook, they're taking down all the Stop the Steal groups. So there's like crazy technological censorship going on right now. I don't know. Again, I don't know. It's scary because freedom of speech is part of the First Amendment. And then people make the argument, well, it's social media, that's not government. But I do believe the government is working with social media right now. I don't know what your opinion is on that. Like, has government been working with social media? And if that's indeed the case, then are they violating the First Amendment?
Absolutely. I have also been a victim of censorship on Facebook, not Twitter yet. But I'm probably not as active on Twitter as I am Facebook. And although I'm learning to be, as I'm talking to people like you and Jose Vega and LaRouche, Pack, and others have encouraged me, especially now, to get the word out on the Hammer and that kind of thing.
Right.
So I've been trying to do it more and more. So far, none of that's been censored. But the point you're making, the larger point is, we are being censored. Our freedom of speech is being denied. That is not even in question. And it is shocking that we haven't already seen the FBI, Department of Justice, lodge a court action in which a court could order them to stop doing this. And I have to ask, like you, I'm scratching my head saying, William Barr,
right? That's why I tweeted
that. Our Attorney General, where are you
exactly
in the fight for our Constitution? That's
hopefully.
his first allegiance,
Mhm.
is to the Constitution, not the president. He's
Right.
hired by the president, but his allegiance is to the Constitution.
Do you think there's any chance that this is going to go to the Supreme Court? Something having
yes.
to do, okay, and
Yeah.
how would that work? Like, what's the, I guess that has to be taken to the state courts first and then denied and then go to the Supreme Court?
Probably, unless it's of such a time-sensitive nature, just like Judge Alito ordered Pennsylvania to separate the ballots arriving after November 3rd from the ballots that were postmarked as they should have been November 3rd. He has already, so you have a member of the Supreme Court, you don't have the whole Supreme Court, but they didn't have to go through a lower court to get Alito to do that.
Right.
That
I
was-
didn't know that.
Yeah, that happened couple, 3 days ago.
Well, that's
Look up
hopeful news.
Alito. Look up
Okay.
Judge Alito.
Judge
on that.
Alito.
Yeah.
Again, working for the Board of Elections, you know, the ballot gets up. I discovered the ballot gets separated from what I say it's identifier, which is the envelope, which is postmarked right away. The minute it comes in the door, this is what we they explained to us. The minute the actual ballot, the absentee and the mail-in ballots come in, they're taken right out of the envelope to protect privacy of the person who's voting. So they're automatically separated from the envelopes. I don't know if they keep the envelopes, but the ballots are then put into a pile or into a bin and they're mixed up. So I'm just like, that's crazy to me because as you know, the ballot has absolutely nothing on it but check marks. Like you could take 5,000 ballots and, you know, filter them into this bin and there's no proof because they were separated from their envelope and from their affidavit.
And there's no number on the ballot that corresponds to a number on the envelope, right? There's no way to make.
No, there's not. I gave out a ton of working at the Board of Elections. People come in, we don't find their information, so we give them an affidavit ballot, and the affidavit is basically on the envelope. And we just rip one of the ballot sheets off, and instead of putting it in the machine, we put it in the envelope. Nobody's like, what I think is that they should connect each ballot to a voter. But they don't do that. It's just completely miscellaneous. Like your ballot, they should have a number on the ballot, and then that's okay. Your number 9,556, and notated in the computer system. They don't do that. You know, and anyone's ballot could be anyone's ballot. And like I said, they mix them up on a table. So right then and there, they're separated forever more from the envelope they came in, which is postmarked, which is, you know, which is the signed affidavit that this is the person who voted, which doesn't even necessarily mean it's the person who voted, but it's scary. That's just a scary thought, knowing that people could just put ballots in there.
Can you tell me, do you happen to know if the envelopes, the postmarked envelopes are kept once they're separated?
I don't know. That's a question. I'm going to call the Board of Elections tomorrow and ask them that question, you know.
Because you would, even though you couldn't match it up to a particular ballot, you would still be able to count envelopes versus ballots.
Right.
And if there's a difference.
I don't know. You never know what they say with, oh, well, it's privacy. We don't, you know what I mean? It's because of privacy, which I don't think is, I think, like you said before, like these elections should be regulated the way that, of course, taxes, like, you know, all the other stuff the state regulates, but they have absolutely nothing like that. Right. Traceability for the election. It's crazy. And it's so important. I think that election transparency is so important, and all of a sudden it's being denied, and it's as some sort of cruelty that all we're asking for is transparency and investigation. And people are saying, oh, you're trying to delegitimize our American voting process. No, we're not. We just want transparency. And I think this, you know, election, look from the beginning on Biden, he won the Democrat primary. I thought that was a little bit fishy, how he was in very much behind, then all of a sudden did this big jump. He was in the lead. He passed by all these other way more better candidates, like, you know, Bernie Sanders was very important. There's all these other candidates they had, and all of a sudden Biden's in the lead. So I think they did something similar, and that, like, with Biden to win the primary, and they went ahead and did this with this election. I really in my heart believe that. I wish, and I hope that somebody could find a way to prove this. And you know, what could we do as Americans? So how could we help? Like, you know, who should we appeal to? What should we do?
Well, I would tell you, just this morning, a guy with a internet podcast, kind of a news guy, alt news guy, really smart, former medical doctor up in Michigan, alerted me to a tweet that's multi-part. You know how people part one, part two, because you can only put so
Yes.
much data in one tweet. So there's a series of 5 or 6 tweets he had done on his own, just as a citizen, some analysis on numbers in Florida that point out an impossibility. In other words, a red flag that something is screwy here. If anyone out there, anyone that listens to you, has done a similar thing and say, nobody's going to pay attention to me, you might just have made a discovery that it is important, very important to analyzing what happened during this election so that we can make the quickest discovery of corruption. So yeah, the average person can do something, but not just that. I think you, Cara, have helped organize some of these Trump trains and car trains. Keep doing it. Make it even bigger and better, because
Right.
the other side is killing us and trying to kill us with psychological warfare, telling us, it's over.
It is psychological
It's over.
warfare. And I don't know, there's this quote from Malcolm X that I really love about how the media will convince you that the person that hates you loves you, and the person that loves you, that cares about you, actually hates you. And he calls that psychological warfare. I always love that term when it comes to the media, because they are so evil. I can't even turn
Absolutely.
on my phone. I feel like I'm being harassed. I literally feel like I'm being harassed by my own iPhone. And this is for 4 years now. And now it's just the freaking icing on the cake for them. I mean, for 4 years, I'm reading they've attacked Donald Trump, and they've made all these false claims that they couldn't prove in court. And they spent billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, on these investigations, and nothing came true. And they allowed all these accusations without debunking them to be on the news, to appear on social media. Russiagate, Russia's interfering with our election with no proof whatsoever. And they're allowed to post that stuff up. And now all I want to post is Stop the Steal, or I want to start my Facebook group for Stop the Steal, and it's getting taken down. And the media is completely delegitimizing any opinion of half of America, more than half of America right now, that thinks that there was fraud. And they're saying that that's automatically. Reddit put out something saying that if you even mention election fraud, they will automatically remove it from their website.
Yep.
So it just is, it's unbelievable to me that this is happening right now. And organizing these rallies is important to keep the morale up, but people are opening their phones and they're sort of starting to lose hope. Like, I opened my phone today and it's already talking about what Biden's going to do in his presidency. Is Trump going to have to be dragged out of the White House screaming? It's like they just don't stop. They don't stop. They're so evil. As you know, I'm sure they're all owned by the same people. There's like 5 companies that own all of these media sources. And a scary thing is actually CNN and the Cartoon Network are owned by the same people, which I find to be insane, because they're indoctrinating these kids, I'm sure, at a very young age through the cartoons. So yes, I agree. I think that like whistleblowers are so important. And I think that if we could solidly prove fraud in even one county of this election in one state, then it's going to have to be addressed. And I think that you could say logically, and I'm not an attorney, that if this could happen in this one county, then this could have happened in every county in the United States.
Absolutely right. And I like your thinking. I like let me just say, you're one very smart lady.
Thank you.
I've met a lot of people, but you have stepped into the fray. You served as a voting official at the precinct. You've seen the process. You're a patriot. You're thinking things through and you're connecting dots. And I want you to even think globally a moment. All of this, the media, the cheating in elections, is not independent of what's going on globally. I cannot tell you who's running the thing in a worldly sense.
Right.
I could throw names around like Soros and others. They're certainly part of it and they fund it. But there is a concerted effort, global in scope, to take this country, trash it, its form of government, change it, and resurrect it as a socialist international system. If we don't fight this battle now,
Yes.
imagine what will happen the next election. In the meantime, they can do a lot to stop us, our thinking. They will go along with the censorship. It will get worse. Our rights will not be expanded. They'll be contracted even more. And we will become weaker because we're a big nation. We have good-hearted patriots, but we need to communicate. And if they control the means of communication, we don't have horses anymore. You know, we have to find a way to get through this. So the best way is to win this fight now. Don't let it go one more election cycle, because it will be gone for all intents purposes.
Right. Well, I hope that we can fight it in time for this election to, like, for Trump to come out, as I still believe he's the winner. You know,
Yeah.
once Biden gets in, it's like people are feeling empowered and emboldened right now. We had a rally yesterday for medical freedom to protest the COVID vaccine mandatory. And as soon as they announced Biden the winner, all of a sudden the Bar Association of New York, where we're outside protesting, announced that they are going to go forward and recommend a mandatory vaccination for New York. So it's like people are being, and Cuomo and all of the other corrupt governors are being really, I guess, it's giving them power to know that Biden is being announced as the possible, I'm not even going to say president, because I don't consider him my president. I don't think he's the rightful winner. And I just hope that they find a way to get to the Supreme Court in the next week or 2 weeks, you know, because like I said, I'm not a legal expert, but I read a little bit about the other time that this happened with Gore and Bush, and you know, it's timely. It's really timely. That was what I think the Supreme Court decided. There wasn't enough time, so we have to get this out there now and find a place where there was voting fraud and have somebody sue and bring that to the Supreme Court.
They will use every crisis possible to take away our rights, and they'll
Like
find
COVID,
a
I don't know
rationale.
what your opinion on COVID was. Do you feel like that kind of was a part of the plan with COVID to sort of use it in this election to their favor?
You know, some people have said COVID was introduced to the world to create this chaos, and so that it could be exploited by the Cuomos and other, I call them dictators, of the world, to reduce liberties and to take greater control of the populations. That's a possibility. Do I have evidence? No. But it's something your logical mind.
Right. I think if you put the pieces together, like, it's just like the puzzle pieces fit that way and they don't fit the other way. It's like, if I'm thinking, okay, COVID, election fraud, like somehow the puzzle pieces just fit together. And if I think it doesn't have anything to do, it almost seems like I'm trying to force puzzle pieces together, because it's too much. It's too coincidental. It was like a playbook they went by with COVID. They're doing it now. It's the same playbook as I'm seeing it. I remember back in March, I right away was repulsed by the idea of this whole taking away of our personal liberties for quote unquote safety. And I was watching the media slowly but surely introduce this. Now you're going to wear a mask. Now you're going to social. Every day it was like, let's introduce this. And this is what they're doing, what they've been doing with this election. Like, Biden is projected the winner. He's been projected the winner by a landslide for months now. And then they're slowly, as the days have passed since November 3rd, they kept Donald Trump's score low, even though he won those certain states, just to put into the minds of the people, Biden is in the head, Biden is in the lead. And then you wake up every day to these news stories slowly, like kind of lowering the lobster into the pot so it doesn't scream that Biden is the winner. And it sort of reminds me a lot of what happened 7 months ago with this introduction of the taking away of our civil liberties. And it's scary. It's scary. I just see them using the same playbook, you know, and all the laws that were changed for the election had to do with COVID being a threat. That's why we have to have these mail-in votes.
Absolutely right.
You know,
absolutely right.
And as I'm sure, I don't know if you heard in Pennsylvania, like a lower level court judge said, oh no, because of COVID, there can't be any extra people watching the ballots being counted. I think that got overthrown, but this has been the excuse now since the beginning of the year. Because of COVID, we could do whatever we want. We could change laws. We could violate an election.
Right. And the judge violated the law. It's not up to him to
Right.
decide the law. It's the laws are passed by the state legislatures, and the states legislatures who are Republican in Pennsylvania never gave anyone the authority to change the date.
Right.
So the
That's
judge
crazy.
was speaking out of line.
So maybe, do you think there's a chance that that could be brought to the Supreme Court? That Pennsylvania didn't have a right to change the date, and the Supreme Court could decide on that?
Absolutely.
So
The
that's
question,
that's a path.
but the question is, even if the Supreme Court does that and says, spanks that judge on the hand and say, no, what's the penalty?
Well, the penalty should be that the election count stopped, a certain time, and up until that point, those counts are, if they want to, I mean, they really took their time with that count. It doesn't seem logical how long it took.
But here's the problem. Just like you cannot mate a ballot to an envelope, how do I mate a counted ballot to a time for a person?
Well, I think that I don't know how, from what I was like following on the internet, which, as you know, I don't 100%, I don't trust at all. They had 74% of the vote counted. I was checking it in real time, like really like having a heart attack about it. And they were saying up until like a day or two ago, or three maybe, Pennsylvania was only counted by 60% of the vote. And right now Donald Trump is winning. And then I think they were going so slow in all the states because they want to see how much more do we have to tamper with this in whichever way that they can. So they were slowly counting it, but they were announcing sort of, okay, 64% of the vote has been counted. I think that after a certain time, like, no more votes should be counted. You guys, like, especially in a state.
I see what you're saying. If it's a matter of time, I'm sure those computers
right, a matter
keep
of time.
a track of time. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, like it could be deemed unconstitutional that these governors announced we're gonna count votes up until so and so date. Then maybe that's the way. I don't know, and I think that would apply to a lot of states.
Right.
Like Donald Trump was in the head; it was in the lead up until like the night of the election for sure, and even the day after the election. Then all of a sudden, the gap started closing, and all these Biden mail-ins started appearing. It's just terrifying, it's terrifying to me. And Democrats should be scared too.
Oh yeah, and I'm thinking about what you're saying because I visualize people sitting, one ballot, two ballots. It's November 4th, the day after the election, one ballot, two ballots, three ballots. As that person does that, nothing is being time hacked. In other words, there's no record of what time it was when that person said 1, 2, 3.
Right.
But there would be a record once I hand that piece of paper to a person operating the vote tally and they enter that total. Right. There would be a time record of that.
Yeah.
So you're right. Anything after November 3rd could be discounted.
Right. Unless I guess it was legitimate absentee, like how they.
Right.
I mean, there's been legitimate absentee ballots since like a while now, but all these mail-in votes, I don't feel like they should be counted. I don't. And I'm not trying to take away. Trying to take away people's right to vote, but I don't know. I know there was a lot of early election voting where people actually went to the polls, but those were counted in the tally, I believe, before the mail-ins. Yeah. And a lot of those were obviously in favor of Donald Trump because he was in the head. They counted those machines, all the early voting. Supposedly the early voters were supposed to be Biden, favor Biden, and the people who voted on the day of the election favor Trump. But I'm sure they counted those ballots before because they're through the machines, and Trump was still in the lead. So all these people that mailed in these paper ballots that have no identifier on them, well, that's the only thing that gave him the win. It makes no sense. You know how they do polls with percentages? I can only go, and sometimes there's only 10 people in the poll. I'll go by the one person I know that sent in a mail-in ballot, and she sent it in for Trump. The one person I know that actually sent in a mail-in ballot. So 100% of the people I know that sent in a mail-in ballot sent it in for Trump, and she's from Michigan. Mm-hmm. So all these ballots were for Biden? No, I don't believe that. And I'm curious that question. I'll find that answer. Do they save the affidavit envelopes?
Yeah, because people probably in the system, see if you can actually diagram what happens in time to this kind of ballot, that kind, mail-in ballot, absentee ballot, machine voting. Are they handled differently? And does it matter or not?
Yeah, well, I know they throw all the ones that are, like I said, the absentee and the mail-ins into a pile and they remove them from their envelope. I don't know what they do with those envelopes.
But they were mixed, the mail-in.
They're mixed. They're all mixed together as far as I know. I will call and find out. I mean, as far as New York goes, I think even if you could prove some fraud in New York, you could.
Sure. Oh, I agree with you.
I don't know if they would bother trying to do it in New York because they just make that assumption that New York is blue. But if you could prove some sort of incompetency, maybe, or some sort of even call for like the calling the election earlier. Okay, New York called the election without calling the votes.
Right.
If they did that, then other states did that, and that should be looked at. Like, you shouldn't call an election before the votes are in. Just
That's
making
right.
the assumption that it's a blue state.
Exactly.
You're
right.
So it's scary.
And if I were you, write your notes down about how to improve the process, because I think you could be one of those key people who writes a letter, or better yet, carry a document in to your state representative and say, this is the way the process should work so we can ensure integrity and honesty. If you have ideas.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of ideas. It's just, it's the whole thing with with election. It's like they say it's not fair to certain groups if you're too strict with asking for identification, or if you're too strict with proving that this is the person. So that it makes it really difficult, because they'll say that it's against certain minority groups, which makes it really sticky.
You know what's funny? I never hear of such a group going to court and complaining. I never hear of that in the news. It's always some Democrat Party person who is claiming that that would be discrimination.
Right.
Well, if there's discrimination, that group would have said so.
Right. And it's like you just assume that minorities don't have IDs, and that they, it's a shame. It's such a shame with what they got away with. And they're not going to get away with it, I'm hoping.
Right.
I really hope to God that, well, let me ask you another question before I forget about the, so there's this circulating thing going around. Everyone's saying that, perhaps that one of the saving graces, and I don't know if this is true or not, that there's a watermark or something like that.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah. That's been the topic of discussion. I have talked with others about this. First of all, I think there's something on the internet that tries to show the watermark, but the picture isn't good. It's kind of dark, and it shows it as a pattern of dots, kind of helter-skelter, not a circle, not a square, just a positioning of dots. But to be honest with you, I've seen no evidence or heard of no evidence yet that that's actually been used anywhere. So right now I'm skeptical.
Yeah,
I
that
would love it to be
it
true.
would have been great. Really
Would have been great.
I mean, they should have foresaw this coming. I think Donald Trump is very, what's the word? I'm not going to say, that's not the right word. When somebody really believes in the process, really believes he's going to win because the people are going to vote for him, even though he did suspect election fraud, I don't think he saw this coming.
Not this
to
big.
To the scale, right? Where they really made it hard to prove, and like I said to my friend, I think Donald Trump is like the only president that actually thinks he's the president. He actually wants to he thinks he's running the country. And whereas these other presidents like Bush and like Obama, they were puppets. And that's why they hate him so much. And now they found their perfect dummy president in Biden, then Kamala Harris. They're perfect for to be puppets. Trump actually thought he was making rules and actually creating policies. And that was like a problem for him, because it's ridiculous. It's sad. I was thinking of running for office, and I know a lot of other regular people want to, but this is so demoralizing. It's like, okay, we're going to put all this work in, and the voting process doesn't even count. Doesn't work. It's wrong,
No, you're right. But do not It's kind of like the devil tempts us.
Right.
Don't fall to that temptation
No,
to
I
believe
won't.
those. Right.
I won't. I definitely won't. And I hope a lot of other people don't. People are just, just need, I think, morale right now.
And say a prayer. I notice you have a cross on. I have
Yes.
mine on also.
Yes, I've been praying.
And do pray.
I've been
Yes.
praying. We all are. Other questions I have for you is, do you think that, like, being a whistleblower or something, do you think that, what kind of position, do you think that you're putting yourself at risk in telling us all of
Oh,
this?
sure. I mean, I've already had people contacting me who I know are agents of the other side
Right.
that have become aware that I'm out talking about this, that, and the other thing, and they don't want that.
Right.
They will try to ask me or General McInerney. He also received that kind of a communication. That what they want to do is get you to say something, and then they'll publish it and misquote you and say, see what he said?
Right.
And it's a lie.
Right.
So I'm learning quickly, don't talk to people you don't trust.
Yeah, it's scary. And I'm like saying to myself, I mean, I really respect the WikiLeaks guy, Julian Assange. I think he's a great guy. I don't care what anybody says.
I do too.
Wouldn't it be useful to get him out of jail right now to freaking find a way to hack? Like I think that should be let's get Julian Assange out of jail and have him, find a way into to prove through the technology and through some sort of hacking.
Yes.
Like, yes. I think that Trump probably wishes that he gave him some sort of, what is it when they allow you into the country and you're a criminal?
Pardon?
A pardon. Isn't he being charged in
asylum?
Asylum. Give him asylum here in America now, and put him on the books as a paid person to figure out what's going on here.
Exactly.
That would be wonderful. But unfortunately, he's been put in jail for being, a patriot or no, he just did so much for so many people. I feel like he'd be really useful right now, but he's in jail. So he's in a jail cell. He has no internet access.
Yep.
Very sad. Let me see if I have any more questions. Somebody had the question is, why is the case that safety and privacy be not mutually exclusive?
What's not mutually exclusive?
Safety and privacy. Why is the case? Why is that?
Oh, I know what they're after. They're referring to the mass surveillance that was put into place after 9/11.
Right.
And all this surveilling everyone, the people, Americans. The NSA, National Security Agency's mission is to produce foreign intelligence. In other words, intelligence about foreign nations who are an enemy, an adversary, some nation that we're suspicious of, to ensure the security of the country so that we're not surprised like we were on December 7th, 1941 in Pearl Harbor, and now like we were on 9/11, 2001.
Right.
Surprise attack that should never. Those 3,000 people should be among us today.
Right.
It is an absolute travesty of the utmost magnitude that those people died. And the guilty people is the United States government and the National Security Agency and other security agencies that didn't do their job. And they could have, because guess what? The people that hit us on 9/11 weren't brilliant. They used weaknesses.
Right.
Just like when you're in a boxer, your opponent has weaknesses. You want to exploit those. Maybe they don't guard the chest as well. Maybe they don't guard for an uppercut, whatever. You exploit those. They exploited our weaknesses. And we had stupid weaknesses.
A lot, yeah.
It really was. So anyway, what I want to say is, the people who said, yeah, we have to surveil our own people, because if a bad guy gets into the country, how will we discover him if we don't surveil our own people? What if he's here in Brooklyn, hiding out in an apartment, If we don't surveil our own people, we won't discover that.
Right.
But here's the deal. They're doing it knowing our names, our addresses, our phone number, anything they want to know about us. Benny and I said, time out. You don't have to do it that way. You can protect the identity of every innocent American by encrypting it with encryption. And that way, it's there in the database, but you don't get to see it unless Cara is talking suddenly to a known terrorist. She thinks nobody's watching, but every time she calls or emails or whatever to that person, we know about it. But her identity's protected because guess what? Cara didn't mean to call that guy. It was a misdial. She was calling a friend of many years on Long Island who has 1-digit difference from that terrorist as a phone number. And she just hit the wrong number. Right. So you don't want false people, to people to react against you. So you would have to derive evidence over a few days or a few weeks that Cara was repeatedly calling that bad person, repeatedly. And that would be evidence to take to a court to say, Judge, this person is enjoying privacy, but they are repeatedly in contact with Mohammed somebody, who knows?
Right.
And we therefore request you revealing this person's identity.
Right.
To
but in what ways could that backfire? I think a lot of ways. Like privacy, people's privacy.
No, because it would have to go to a judge
right.
Under the Fourth Amendment. Remember what it says, you're protected on all your personal effects and things, unless probable cause is demonstrated in a court of law. That's the way the Fourth Amendment functions. Right. So we would have to have evidence that you are in repeated communication with a bad person. Right. Now, it may turn out that you are an investment broker and that you're not doing anything wrong, but you do talk to your terrorist and you don't know he's a terrorist. So, because he's just calling you about business, maybe 2-3 times a week over several months. All right. The judge says, yes, you may investigate. We investigate. We find out, guess what? It's just business. It doesn't make the investment broker a terrorist. But so you let the legal system work the way it's always worked in this country, but you're using data. Right.
Okay. So just to kind of wrap up what you said before, so we're going to encourage Americans, you're saying, to, if come forward with anything. I think it could be anything, any whistleblower anywhere that could kind of shine light on that there was fraud or that there was incompetency in their district, in their neighborhood. And by doing that, if you could prove that in your neighborhood and take that to your legislatures in your court, and then maybe it could be used as an example on a national level and take that to the Supreme Court.
And it sounds hard that you have to take that to some agency or to the legislature. Let me suggest a simpler way for people in your audience. Call the hotline at truethevote.org. True the vote, no spaces, .org. They have a hotline.
Is this who's running this hotline? Is this?
Yes, Catherine Engelbrecht. She is the lady that has been fighting voter corruption, election corruption, for the better part of 10 years. She also is the lady who fought the Internal Revenue Service of the federal government and won when she proved that a certain lady in the IRS was purposefully making it difficult for conservative organizations to get tax documents, file taxes. She was just resisting making it difficult. She took that person to court and won her case. So this lady is tenacious. She's honest, and is someone you should actually meet one day. Right now, she's up to her, you know what, in alligators with voter fraud.
Right.
But at some point, but she does have a voter fraud hotline. It's an 800 number. And you can see it at truethevote.org. And that people can actually report fraud 24/7.
Okay, great. So thank you for putting that out there. And and also to summarize, you're saying that the hammer, so people understand when the hammer and the scorecard are two different types of computer programming.
Mhm.
I would call it that are easily manipulated. They were used at the beginning to fix elections, you're saying, from bad guys, but now it's being used against us.
Yes.
And what I guess the ultimate bad guy that they've created, Donald Trump, who is actually the only president who cares about America as far as I'm concerned.
Got it. You got it.
So
Absolutely.
that's very interesting. So how are you planning on, is there any way that you could take this further with your theories, and anyone you could contact for them to investigate further?
Yes, I'm working with a group of people looking at data to look for patterns that lead us to corruption. That's all I can say at this point.
Okay, great. Please, thank you so much for doing that. And I hope that you just keep working hard. And considering your background, which is really impressive, you could find a way to bring this to the light in any way, shape, or form. Get it put it out there.
I will not sleep at night until we win this thing.
Yeah, hopefully maybe Newsweek. I don't even know anymore. Newsmax, I think, is the only somewhat credible station out there.
Yes.
Maybe we could find a way to get you on there and talk about this, because very sad, the mainstream media is, I call them the media mafia.
Yes.
And what's that law that they is it RICO, or what was that? The mafia had to fight them. There was a law. I forget what it's called.
Oh, the RICO.
Right. That needs to, they need to get involved, because the media is a mafia, and they're horrible. And they've been psychologically terrorizing me, I could say, for 4 years now. They've bad news on my phone, I can't take it anymore. I wish I could just find a way to turn them off, and there's no way to do it. They live in your pocket. They literally live in my cell phone is right here.
They do.
You can't you can't take a call. You can't watch a text message or communicate with family without seeing some crazy media infiltration. And I'm tired of it. I think they're the fundamental problem in the mainstream media. Obviously, I think that's an obvious given, but I don't know what type of journalism there could be. Does it have to be through a nonprofit organization that's going to have any credibility in the future? I'm just trying to think of answers. How could we have credible journalism again? Is it possible for a nonprofit?
Yeah, it is possible, but it's going to take some money and some dedicated people and when I say dedicated, I mean to the Constitution and this word that LaRouche often talks about, that's called truth.
Right. There's no
truth. If we don't have truth, we can't manage ourselves.
Right. And I want to get that word election transparency out there too. I don't know. I guess people are, the criticism I'm getting. Yesterday, I did a speech on that we will not concede in Albany. And I found out as I was getting on stage to talk about medical freedom that CNN just called the election for Joe Biden. So the whole trajectory of my whole speech changed, and I went off off my head. I was so mad, and I'm saying we will not concede, and we were just chanting that. And I think that we have to put that word out there. We will not concede until we are proven without a shadow of a doubt that Biden was the winner. And I don't think that's possible for them to prove that. I don't know what the solution is, but I know that we as voters deserve transparency. We deserve, if there is any suspicion, investigation should be had. It shouldn't just be, we're going to just believe what the news media is telling us.
And
that
Cara,
includes.
I'd like you to tell everyone this. If we give up on this today, what are we going to do later? Are we going to go into civil war? Are we going to turn to guns and bullets? Because if you don't resolve human disagreements through peaceful means, you can bet you are setting the stage for violent means. Now, we had a revolution in this country and fired bullets at the British for doing what the left is doing to us today.
Right.
If we don't use the superior framework of the Constitution, meaning our three branches of government, which include the judiciary, if we don't get this right, we will sow the seeds for another revolution. Mark my words. And it won't just be in the United States. The whole world looks at us to achieve the right goal with honesty and integrity. We're the model. We're the enforcer. If we don't get it right, nobody else is going to.
Right. Yeah, everybody kind of takes cue from the United States. If we're like, we're kind of looked at like the pinnacle of democracy. And now we've had our leader overthrown in what people are calling a soft coup, but I feel like it's a hard, like technology is more powerful than guns.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
And it can be.
Yeah, this to me is a more of a harder coup than if someone actually came into the White House and removed him bodily, because they're doing it with technology and they're doing it through brainwash and propaganda. It's disgusting. It's just un-American, and this needs to be investigated. And I thank you again so much for putting us onto this this hammer and all this software that's being used against us now, which was supposed to help us, but now it's being used against us. It's a funny
But let me reverse the thanks. I say this to LaRouche all the time, and I'm going to say it to you. Without voices, those of us who know this stuff and how to deal with it are not going to be heard.
Yes.
It's a team. We are part of a movement that Trump talks about at his rallies, which is for truth, honesty, and the American way, the US Constitution. And we're all part of that team. So
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For doing what you do.
Yeah. And
Godspeed.
You too. And all I want to say at the end is, please, like, understand on the other side. I have a lot of friends who are Democrats and who are celebrating, like they're like gloating in my face. It's like a lot of people. I think that I want to make this last point. And this really hit me. I could tear up right now. That like I don't want to cry.
That's all right. Do it.
No,
it's human.
It hit me the night of the election. When they announced that the morning before, the morning after the election, when I was seeing that all of a sudden Biden might be in the lead, you don't realize what's taken away from you almost until it is. And it's like, people are motivated, and that happened with COVID when our rights were taken away. So you don't realize what you had until it was taken away. And when it comes to Donald Trump, I think he's the first president, if not the only in a long time. Maybe JFK was the last one, and I wasn't around to see JFK. I wasn't born. That people love. They love Donald Trump. He means something personal to a lot of people, including myself and a lot of people. Like they just for whatever the reason, he has that effect where it's like personal, very personal. I think he gave a lot of people hope that felt disenfranchised. They felt like they weren't being heard. People that were had given up. So 4 years ago, he gave a lot of people hope. And those people feel like something is being taken away with them. So when they fight for Donald Trump and they fight for the side that we're on, it's personal and it's out of love for a leader and love for the country. Whereas I feel like the people who voted for Biden is not they don't care about him. They're voting based on hate for Donald Trump and based on hate. So their motivation is hate of a person and let's get him out. Whereas our motivation is we love this president. We love America. So we're fighting out of a place of love is what I kind of figured out in the past few days. And that's why so many people I know are just so heartbroken over this. It feels like, you lost a family member. Like, I feel like I'm like being stabbed in the chest because for me, Donald Trump, like he opened my eyes to the media. That's one thing I could say his legacy will always be opening your eyes to questioning things, making people realize like a lot of things they had never thought of before and giving a lot of people hope that they didn't have before. So he means a lot personally to a lot of people. And when these horrible people are gloating in your face, it's like they don't really pick up on that. You don't know what it feels like to really actually have this type of loyalty to a leader. You know, you're basing your vote and your glory on something that was hate of a person.
You know, I wish. Are you recording this as a video?
Yes, I am. The live stream will be up, and our technician Kynan, who is invisible, is taking clips of everything so we can upload them in segments as well.
What Cara did just now, and I'm including the tears in the eyeballs, and the way she said it should be made a clip, and with her permission, circulated because she is speaking for millions of us that normally don't express our feelings as well as she just did. And that needs to be preserved and spread out there in as many fora as you can find. That's my opinion. It's up to you, Cara.
No, it's fine. It's fine with me. Like, you know, it's been something I've been dealing with for days now, and I know a lot of people understand. And it's like you're kind of, as a leader in these type of rallies and movements, I have to be up there saying, oh, you know, we have to be strong. But for me, I'm just like, you know, I'll be sitting in my house and I'll just tear up all of a sudden, and I'm just like, wow, you don't realize how personal it was until,
Yeah,
you know, it's
true.
taken away.
It's
I know
true.
a lot of people that are heartbroken right now, and so please, like, to the other side, like, a lot of people that are in your family, that are your friends, like that, a lot of people, your neighbors, are really hurt right now by something that's very personal to them, by you know. So please, like, take that into consideration, and also take into consideration that there should be, in all fairness, you know, there should be transparency. You'd want it on your side too.
Something I've never understood, Cara, is how the left, who really visibly acts as though mob rule is the way ahead for them, you know, gang up on people and just get them out of the way, as opposed to a Trump who is as dedicated to the civil rights of the US Constitution, the very document that gives the other side the right to demonstrate, the right to voice. They are acting in ways that will shred the very document their future generations will depend upon for their rights of speech, their right to gather, their right to demonstrate, all of these things. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, it's sad. You know, these are all things that I didn't realize until COVID happened at the beginning of the year, when I started really observing things and when they were taken away, you know.
Yeah.
It's scary when your rights are taken away. When, like, I remember for me, it was when I went to go for a jog and I got to the park and there was a big padlock on it. And I'm like, I can't even exercise. It's like, I like, March for me was such a hard month when they slammed down with all these mandates that I know are unconstitutional. I know in the core of me are wrong. I'm not motivated unless something is really organic to me. And that was very organic. They were violating our rights. And to me, I feel the same way, but worse. Now, you violated our election. You violated our right to choose a leader. You're unseating a leader that people love and mean a lot to. You're doing what they do in other countries, where they take a leader out and they put a new one in, and they completely crush that. I guess that you're smashing the voices of a nation by taking out their leader and putting one in that you want.
That's right.
The United States has done what they've done to countries since the beginning of time, since the beginning of its existence.
And what you just said is so profound. Remember, you asked me a little while ago about safety and security. Do you have to give up, you know, security, your privacy, to get safety? And I said, no, you don't. You can get both. Just protect the identities of innocent people until you have enough evidence, suspicion, to show to a court of law, get the permission to uncover. Very careful, constitution-based process. What you just said is padlocked, people making decisions for you that you should be able to make. Someone always said, what do you tell people about mass surveillance when someone says, I'm not doing anything wrong, why should I worry about mass surveillance? And I always tell them, it isn't what you are doing. You don't get to decide what's wrong. Somebody else does. Someone else decided to put that padlock or force the person that owned that store to put a padlock on it, didn't they? His name was Cuomo.
Cuomo, right.
Other people in positions of power decide what's wrong, not you. That's what's wrong with mass surveillance.
Right. And this is just, to me, this, I always say things come in threes. It was COVID, then it was the race riots, and now it's like this. And I knew the third thing was going to be a hammer. I didn't think it was going to be Trump being, because I'm very hopeful, but I knew that a third thing this year was coming. That was going to be, I knew that the other two things were in preparation for something. I just couldn't really wrap my head around it. I knew that the COVID scare, not that it's not a real virus, but the whole reaction to it, and the media, the way they latched onto it, and the, all the riots that we had was the second thing. And I just had this gut instinct, and that was what was making me so angry and so emotional, was that this is all leading to something else. And I just couldn't really place my finger on it.
Right.
And this is what it was all for, in my opinion. And I don't care how that sounds. My brother will disagree with me, but he believes it's, that those things were wrong, but he'll say, no, it can't, the election can't be that important. Of course it's that important, they've wanted him out for years now. Like I said, he's the only president that actually believed he was the president. He's the only president, in my opinion, that was elected by the people. I don't know what fraud has gone on in the past, but to me, it's like last year they thought last election, they thought she was a shoo-in. So I don't think they implemented any of their, whatever it is that they do to make sure that the person they want to win wins.
Right.
And he slid under somehow. And this year they came prepared. They were prepared. And it's bigger than I think it's bigger than we can imagine.
Yes,
so
it is.
I hope that people keep faith, people stay positive, that Trump stays positive. I'm sure he is emotional right now as well, that he knows that we are behind him, and will take direction if he has any, because I know I will. There's a rally next Saturday in Washington, D.C. called, it's just one of the Stop the Steal rallies. Just a bunch of people called the Million MAGA March, and people hopefully will come.
What are they expecting people to do next Saturday?
Well, this is all coming about, I think, today. It's like, it's been circulating, all the different state people, like, for me, I'm going to try to get some buses down there coming from New York City and Long Island. And we're just encouraging like all the states to come and protest, protest.
So are we going to gather on the mall, or is it a giant car train?
It's going to, all of this hasn't been decided yet. Like I said, it's all like kind of like coming organically together today. I think a lot of people are upset by the call yesterday.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Washington, D.C. is a terrible place to drive. It's even worse than Manhattan.
Right.
It's worse.
I know. I've been there.
Yeah. So let me just think about this as input. When I heard you had already been part of a rally, was it Tarrytown, New York, or somewhere?
Okay.
I imagined DC. DC has a beltway all around it.
Right.
Can you imagine a giant car train that would go around that beltway 5 times, whatever? It's going to take 40 miles to get around it.
Well, how many cars could clog it up and just not move?
Oh, it would take a lot of cars, because that beltway is 4 lanes wide, or 3 lanes going one direction, all the way around the District of Columbia. It actually travels through Maryland and Virginia. Not even within the district, it surrounds it. But the national attention that would get from cameras and things. Now, I agree with you, the mall's good. It's just logistically messy and hard.
Yeah.
Unless you can ensure there are buses for everyone, and even a bus process on the 4th of July, that mall doesn't get out of there till 3 in the morning for fireworks that ended at 10 o'clock. It takes hours to clear that volume of people out.
Right.
But people
Yeah.
could approach the Beltway from multiple directions, get in a circle and just go. And if you need to
How
have,
many miles long is the circle?
well, that circle, I'm guessing is probably 40 miles, but it could be greater. I'd have to look at the circumference and do a calculation.
Yeah, that's an idea. I mean, like, unfortunately, I'm sure they're like, it's like sad. I mean, it's like the new, it's so hard to get, like, I hope we could get this on the news somehow beforehand.
Well, and
just
if
to
you
put the
can't
word
do,
out.
if you can't do this for Saturday, think about it for 2 weeks from now. We're still going to
Right.
need more rallies.
Right,
Just
right.
think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thought. Thank you. It's like, it's hard. It's hard. Hopefully people come out and haven't lost hope, because do not lose hope. Like, we are
Exactly.
not standing down.
Exactly.
Trump has done some crazy things. Maybe he could pull this one off, and if anyone can, he can, to expose this fraud. But he's gonna need help from people like you, I think, computer people.
Yeah.
So as much as you could help, please, please keep
You
helping.
know,
Oh, absolutely.
We've been on for an hour and a half, so I do think we should close here.
Yeah, let's close.
Okay.
But in order to properly close out, I want to remind people watching that when Ben Franklin had just was there, and I think it was the ratification of the Constitution, a little black girl came up to Benjamin Franklin and said, "Mr. Franklin, what kind of government did you give us?" He said, "We gave you a republic if you can keep it." Now, he told that to somebody who couldn't vote, who probably wasn't even seen completely as a human being yet. Why did he do that? Well, for one, he didn't think that voting alone was acting for your country. He didn't think that just, being a spectator was enough to have a sway in your politics. So now, what is it that we can do? Well, for one, you have to just listen to what you just heard here and spread this like wildfire. Get it out to everyone that you know. That's the one immediate way you can do it, because just talking about the truth will get things going. Now, if you're afraid to do so, I would refer you to my friend Martin Luther King Jr., who said in a sermon in 1968, he said, "You may be 38 years old, as I happen to be, and one day some great opportunity stands before you and calls you to stand up for some great principle, some great issue, some great cause, and you refuse to do it because you're afraid. You refuse to do it because you want to live longer. You're afraid that you will lose your job, or you are afraid that you'll be criticized, or that you will lose your popularity, or you're afraid that somebody will stab you or shoot at you or bomb your house. So you refuse to take the stand. Well, you may go on and live until you are 90, but you are just as dead at 38 as you would be at 90. And the cessation of breathing in your life is a belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. So act. Do something. Do something now. Whatever you do, do something. Don't do nothing. You are not a spectator. Democracy was never a spectator sport. And if you want your republic, you better fight to keep it."
Hear, hear.
That's the note we should end on.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So I put everybody's social media links in the chat for everybody to follow. Please go and do so. That being said, I want to wish everybody a happy Sunday. Enjoy it, because tomorrow when the court cases come in and the litigation starts, it's going to get ugly, but don't be afraid. Don't even.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, both of you, Kirk and Jose. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cara.
Okay. Hopefully we meet again in real life.
All right.
One day. Maybe on
Absolutely.
Saturday if you guys are
Yes.
down there.
Yes.
Okay. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.